part of a series. So Michelle and I have been working together for probably close to a decade now on heart-centered learning. And we really believe that during this time when we've experienced so much trauma, that it is really important to focus on positivity, mindfulness, and what we can do from our hearts rather than our brains. So we start today with just a brief overview, and if we had more time, we would ask you lots of questions, but we will have polls next week. So that'll be more of a time to dialogue. So today's just an overview. Next week, we'll focus on leadership, and we'll give you more examples. And then by the third session, Wednesday, December 16th, we really will show you what the package is going to look like, something you may be interested in for your schools, for your districts for next year. So 2020, what can we say? You know, we've learned a lot about screens and communications with our phones and by distance. We've gotten somewhat used to wearing masks, although many of us still find it really cumbersome. And there's lots of things that are very annoying about them, but yet we know that it's critical for our safety. We know that kids have just taken on a new way of being, as we all have during this time period, that having pets around has become really important, and things that families do together can be really critical to the health and well-being of students. And Michelle, what would you add to thinking back?
Right, thinking back, one of the main things that comes to mind is how it gave us an opportunity to really connect in person with our immediate families. Although we were disconnected as far as remote learning went, we became very connected to our families and close circles. And I think that when we think about that, we think about heart. And that is what our work is really about, is thinking more with our heart rather than just our heads. And now, more important than ever, it is important to just have those heart connections with people, those deeper meanings, whether it's our students in various platforms, in reaching out in ways that you never have before, or spending more quality time with family. So when I think about the path going forward, I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful that if we lead with heart, then things will get better and we will find the hope that we need to really connect in deeper and more meaningful ways and levels.
So next slide.
So when we talk about social emotional learning, this is one of the neat things that have happened in a haphazard way, right? That we actually brought social emotional learning more to the forefront because of all the suffering that was happening with so many people. The many unknowns and uncertainties had left schools in a position where they couldn't deny looking at social emotional first and understanding that the social emotional health and well-being of not only students, but families and teachers and school leaders alike actually have to dominate, not just now and not just before, but as we go forward. And when we think about the marriage of social emotional learning and mindfulness, the best way to look at this is that mindfulness, it elevates social emotional, and how it does that is mindfulness is the inside job, taking care of ourselves first, and social emotional is the outside job, so to speak. So the marriage of these two really complement each other. When we work on ourselves and staying healthy and concentrating on our health and well-being, then that in turns to social emotional and how we relate and develop relationships with our students and each other. So we have options now to take care of ourselves and to really find deeper connection between what our purpose is, why we're here, what we're doing for students, and how that all comes together. Next slide, please. So when we're talking about ourselves and taking care of ourselves, one of the things that our work in mindfulness is based on is the neuroscience and the neuroplasticity. And what that means is the brain, we have discovered, is highly malleable, which means that we can retrain it through mindfulness, and helping the mind to calm helps the body in turn to calm. And during this very, very difficult time with so much suffering and so much loss and trauma and challenge every single day, most days can seem like just unfathomable in so many ways. But what we know is this, that learning can't take place or good instruction when the brain is in pain and under fire. So when we're in the amygdala state, which is fight, flight, or freeze, the brain is unable to really tap into the cognitive prefrontal cortex of the brain that is needed for learning and decision making and executive functioning. So what we need to do is to take better care of ourselves, and in turn help students and families to take better care of themselves, and really reduce the amount of stimuli through pause and deep breathing and staying fully present, so that we can calm and quiet the brain, so that we are open to learning, instructing, leading, and living at a higher plane. Chris, I know that, our work, we've talked so much about the brain and heart and emotion and the connections. Maybe you can talk a little bit about the vagus nerve and how that plays in to the whole scenario of education and learning and living.
I'm on mute. Okay. Try again. I want to remind our viewers that in our first book on mindfulness practices, we have a wonderful chapter on neuroscience in the brain, and it really does a nice job of laying out everything Michelle's talked about. In our second book on mindful school communities, we have the parallel or companion chapter on the heart and the science behind the heart. So I just want to say, as we go forward, Michelle's spoken a lot about the heart and how important we know it is to focus on social emotional learning. However, we also believe in science, and we really believe that the science for the heart and the brain are critical. It's critical to know about the science so that, in fact, you can use the understanding of what you've learned about that to really support what you're doing. So the vagus nerve runs from the brain down through the heart to the gut. It's a major nerve in the body. And when it is strong, when it is in tone, we're better able to receive things at our heart center. If we've been wounded in any way, emotionally or physically, sometimes our heart and our vagus nerve are wounded. And that makes that connection between the heart, the gut, and the mind more difficult. And that's going to be, the life will be a little more confusing. Things won't be as well integrated. So these are two important concepts that are really foundational to what we're doing and what we're talking about. Next. Okay, so our work is also based on what we call the 5 C's. It starts with a platform of consciousness. The basic understanding is if you're not aware of yourself, your emotions, what's going on around you, how others are feeling, then it's going to be really hard to be sensitive, to be compassionate, to really say and do the things that are needed to uplift others, or even to be responsive to what happens inside the classroom. So consciousness, which is also mindfulness, being aware of what's going on, being aware of yourself, being aware of your emotions is critical. with that comes compassion. And if you look around the world and you see all the heartache, everything that people are going through, all the suffering, and you think like, what's needed to make a better planet, to make a better earth? Compassion. That's it. More than money, more than success on a career ladder, compassion. But what do we do with our compassion once we have it? Our premise is we need to build confidence so that we have learners in front of us who feel a sense of self-worth and success, and that they're confident that they can take their compassion and go out and be compassionate to others, and that they won't be vulnerable to being injured, which happens sometimes. If you've been wounded, if in fact you've been traumatized, sometimes you don't want to show that compassion to others. So it takes a little work. But with practice, you get courage. And with courage, then you can act in ways that are needed to better support yourself and others. All this happens within the context of a community. That connectedness, which we found out so much about the last few months through the internet, and saying, wow, I mean, it's so wonderful to look online and see someone and say, yes, so nice to connect, even though I'm not physically present with you. Connection, community is critical. All that helps to support compassionate action. Okay, next. So today we said we would give you like 3 examples of what could come if you choose to go with us on our journey next year. So we have exercises in a little pamphlet called Heart Beaming. You can download this from our website, okay? Or you can order copies if you want multiple copies. We're going to do one exercise today. And the picture on the right are some of our fellows in New England. And we've done some of this practice with them. And I have to say, it's just so joyful to be in a community with other educators and to practice this heart beaming. So if you will, you can go ahead and put your hands over your heart, close your eyes if you're comfortable, get your feet on the floor, sit up straight, and just breathe deeply. Be present. Be aware of your heart. And as you continue to breathe, get that breath deep into your belly. So on the inhale, the belly expands like a balloon. And sustain the breath. And on the exhale, pull the navel point to the spine. And hold the breath out. Let's just do that a couple more times at your own pace. Long inhales, long exhales. Now feel the warmth in your heart. And imagine you're looking at a sky full of stars. And as you gaze at these stars, you see one that twinkles just a little more brightly. And as you focus on that star, you see a loved one, someone you care about. And you reach up and you pull that star right into your heart. Take a few deep breaths. Glance up at the sky again, and one more time. See a star twinkling brightly. An image of someone you love. Pull that person into your heart. And inhale and exhale. Open your eyes. You can do this, and you can do this repeatedly. You might even envision someone needing help. So it doesn't only need to be people you love, people you know. So next slide.
So when we talk about this journey ahead, we begin with our mindfulness practice and our mindful school communities books. And when Chris speaks of heart and we go through that exercise, what it reminds us is we can find joy in any moment and in each day when we turn back to our heart. So often our head gets us in trouble if we just use our head as guiding. But when we use our heart, and that's what mindfulness is about, is using our heart and really opening up our capacity to share heart, compassion, and love. And with these two companion books, it really gives you the whole foundational practice of, which is mindfulness, developing that higher consciousness and the 5 C's, and then moving into how to really create those school communities from school by school, district to district, and larger world, mindful school communities that begin with heart, and then take that compassion that when we lead and instruct and live with heart, we open ourselves to having the ability to exercise that deeper level and action of caring, which is compassion. So, and I just want to say, Chris, before you talk about visioning, when I think about these two companion books, I want to say one thing. First of all, there's an e edition now, which we think is awesome, because now schools and districts can actually, with the remote and the hybrid models, can actually access it in edition, so that they can create community school-wide lessons and activities and learning processes to really help kids focus on developing more resiliency and hope through our books. And they can do that collectively because we have the piece. But most importantly, I feel like all these years of education that we've all been in it, and some of you are new to it, that the thing that was really missing was the conversations about heart. And that's why teachers come into, and school leaders come into teaching, right? That is what drives them. But so often it has been absent because of all of the other things and mandates and constraints. So we are opening up to you to let you know that heart still is important, and now more than ever. And in our two books, you will really feel closer connected and more hopeful, we believe, in such a challenging time where so much suffering's happening. And that leads into visioning, right? Where do we go, Chris? What are the tools of opportunity? These are tools of opportunity to bring you into 2021.
Let me just say first that the books are available. You can get links to them from our website. You can go to the publishers, or you can go on Amazon. And they're highly rated. They're important books. They really are. The visioning we've been working with for the last 9 months, offering seminars and webinars. And we're entering this phase right now where I'm starting to do focus groups with college students and high school youth around the country to find out what their visions are for the future. But I realized if we really wanted to be authentic about looking at the futures, we had to get that student voice. And so it's a really exciting time to go through the visioning process that we recommend. And it all fits so well together. Next slide. And Michelle, we've got to watch the time here. So if you can do the quick version.
Sure. So the Heart and Mind Adventure, it really begins with ourself, right? How exciting to give ourselves attention, especially during this time. So if you look at this quadrant, it starts with observing and noticing what is happening, how we are feeling, what emotions are attached. And then it goes into the reflection piece, where we really take a step back, a pause, and start really considering, what does this mean and how do I feel? And then to the next step of journaling. Journaling is such a powerful tool. It is the thought process of reflection that goes into paper and starts unfolding before your eyes. And as you go through this process, what you are doing is deepening your understanding where you are at any given moment. Is there anything you want to add, Chris?
Just that we have a newsletter coming out probably later today or tomorrow that will give you more details about this process. So look for that. Okay.
Great. Next, please. So here's an opportunity for you to just copy this. This is one of our reproducibles that go with our mindfulness practice book, a school communities book. We are vulnerable yet. If we look at situations, we notice how we're feeling, what happened, how it turned out, and what you can do next time through reflection and journaling. It gives you a deeper understanding of how you can come through most anything. Next, please.
And here's another tool we give you today, a HeartMind calendar. So you can look at the right and you can see that we talk about doing, reading, and reflecting. The doing is the meditation, the practice, the mindful practice that you do, the self-care practice. And what we would suggest is that you take a calendar and you have an aim. And how many times a week do you want to do your self-care, your meditation? Figure it out and go ahead and put a heart on the days that you've done it. So very simple. The reading, find some reading to support your learning and put an image of a book on the days when you have time to read. And you may decide that you're going to read just 10 minutes a day. It's amazing what 10 minutes can do. And then part of our quadrant was the reflecting. So we really believe that we need to incubate the thoughts we have. We need the time to be with them, to understand. And part of the simplicity of the system we have is that, in fact, there's time for reflection. So with the reflection, put a question mark on the calendar. Okay, and I'm just going to quickly go through this and say, next week, you'll learn a lot more about this. But HeartMind e-news is our new e-newsletter coming out today, tomorrow. With our package, you'll get discounts on our book study, mindfulness, heart-centered learning tips. Michelle, did you want to say something briefly about that?
No, I just want to say opportunities not to only network with peers, but connect deeper with your students, your family, your peers, and beyond.
You know, part of our vision is that we are going to work with you to create a sustainable community or communities that are heart-centered. And if these grow and multiply, that our world will shift, our mindsets will shift. So you're an important part of that. So we've reached the point where we have time for Q&A, but let's just go to the last couple slides and then we'll come back. And if people want to hang around for a couple questions, Michelle and I can be here for a couple more minutes. Okay, so we've already mentioned upcoming workshops and the newsletter. So these are important things that are happening. Here's how to connect with us. And now back to the Q&A. We want to thank you for joining us today. And we hope that you will take heart and be mindful and take forward the sense of joy, the sense of even in the midst of all this, we can have hope. And we can see, vaccines are coming out. And we've had some school situations where kids are doing remarkably well. And we've had some families that have done remarkably well. So we can take all that we've learned into this adventure we have right now and into what we do going forward. Okay, any questions? Is there anything in the Q&A box or chat box?
And people have the ability to open their mics if they'd like to make a comment or ask a question.
Well, again, I want to say I'm pleased to see people here that I know. And if I don't know you, I hope I get to know you. This is a really dynamic community. I'm just so impressed with the leadership we have, people who really care deeply.
I'm excited for the HeartMind e-news. I can't wait to see that. So thank you.
Yeah, it's going to be full of practical tips. We really are excited about it. Thank you, Stacy. Okay, well, hope to see you next week. And until then, be safe, be well. Take care.
Bye-bye.